Let's bring in Kentucky Congressman. He's also the top Republican on House Oversight Committee, James Comer. He's headed to the southern border tomorrow, where he'll be leading congressional delegation made up of his colleagues. Congressman, thanks so much for joining us today. I want to pull up some numbers on screen just to set us up here. This is the latest monthly numbers from CBP. We're learning border agents have taken 172,000 migrants into custody in March. 19,000 of those people are children. It's a 71% month-on-month increase since February. Sir, as you now know, we're also learning from Governor Abbott of Texas that children are being sexually assaulted at border facilities. It looks like, by every metric, the U.S. government writ large is failing to protect foreign children that it takes into its custody.
You're exactly right. This is one of the biggest failures that I've seen in my 4.5 years in Congress by a presidential administration. Still no word from President Biden or Vice President Harris on what their plan actually is. Still no visit from the president or vice president to the border. Still no change in rhetoric to the other countries that crossing the border illegally will not be tolerated by the United States. So this problem is only going to get worse. That's why my colleagues on the House Oversight Committee are going to El Paso tomorrow, and we're going to spend a 15-hour day on Monday in New Mexico, meeting with Border Patrol agents, going to the Johnson Ranch in New Mexico, where the Biden administration halted construction of the border wall, and just listening to people to see what we can do and bring that back to Washington next week.
Well, we hope, sir, that we can touch base with you and get your thoughts and your takeaways after the trip as well to find out what you learned. It turns out that the Arizona Attorney General issued a direct official request to the vice president for her to visit the southern border in his state. Take a listen to what he has to say about the response he got.
No response is a very loud response, because we have not received any response. When I invited the vice president down, she's a former California AG. We were colleagues at one point when she was California AG. I was Arizona AG. We're both children of immigrants. We both believe very strongly, supposedly, in the rule of law. So it's disappointing.
What do you say to that, sir? Are you surprised?
I'm not surprised, and it is disappointing. And this is a humanitarian crisis. We have children coming across the border at record levels, and that's not going to stop until Biden and Harris demonstrate an ability to secure the border. Right now, for all we know, our adversaries across the world are telling people in these Central American countries, just go on across the border. You can have a better life, and the United States is not going to do anything about it. Until this is changed, these children are going to continue to come across the border, and they're going to be exploited. Not only are they sexually exploited, they're being used by drug cartels in Mexico to carry drugs across the border. And this is something that's just, it's heartbreaking to see. The Biden administration needs to secure the border, and then they need to work with FEMA and the Red Cross and set up shop on the Mexican side of the border, just like what President Trump did, to try to get this under control. We are humanitarians in the United States. We care about these children, but we need to take care of these children on the Mexican side. As long as they continue to get across the border, the problem's going to continue to surge.
And this is, as some of your colleagues have pointed out, now a humanitarian crisis for migrant children. Sir, I want to make sure, though, we get your take on a couple of other of our top stories this weekend. President Biden rolling out this new sort of Supreme Court executive order. He's going to look at the prospect of essentially packing the bench. What are your thoughts on that? This
is another power grab by Joe Biden and the Democrats in Washington. You've already mentioned on your show earlier, Biden as a senator was very pessimistic about stacking the court. He clearly was against it. Steny Hoyer was against making Washington, D.C. a 51st state. But now that they're in control and they've got that power and they just need a few more votes and a little bit of help on the Supreme Court, they've changed their attitude. They've become part of the swamp. And, to stack the Supreme Court at this time in American history is just a terrible demonstration of leadership, a terrible demonstration of hypocrisy, and I'm going to do everything in my ability to block it. I think every Republican in Congress will, but we all know that elections have consequences, and Democrats currently have a majority in Congress. I just hope that there are enough senators on the Democrat side in the U.S. Senate that have a moral compass, because the Democrats in the House have not demonstrated a moral compass. They've just been voting with Pelosi and Joe Biden on everything.
So speaking of voting with them on everything, looking at spending real quick, sir, President Biden has given us sort of a clue as to his larger budget priorities for the coming year. He rolled out the discretionary part of the budget. It's about a third of the overall spending. He's proposing $1.5 trillion. Having had a chance to look at that, can you read the tea leaves and tell us what direction the Biden administration is heading in with the budget?
Well, they just want to spend more money. They want government to get bigger. They want to hamstring the private sector, the typical Democrat platform. And, you know, Joe Biden campaigned as a moderate. His career in the Senate demonstrated that he was more moderate than liberal. But now that the liberals have taken over the Democrat Party, they're just going to spend us into an oblivion. We've already printed $6 trillion during this COVID pandemic, and the Biden administration wants to continue deficit spending. They want to roll out an infrastructure bill that has really very little to do with infrastructure. They just want to spend more money, and I hope that the American taxpayers see through this and demand that Congress try to get some fiscal constraint back in order.